Thank you very much. Is everyone in, Moss? So good evening and welcome. That's a very silent response. How long have you guys been at the... Good evening and welcome. Very good indeed. Today, this evening, I've got a very, very special panel for you, but I wanted to warm things up and set things up a bit. We want to talk about education, specifically universities. And we just wonder, with the world of work moving ever so quickly, is academia, especially universities, are they keeping abreast? Are they providing these hungry businesses with oven-ready graduates who hit the ground running? And we're also going to ask the question, it's a pretty expensive game to be in at the moment. So first of all, let's hear from Lord Willits defending the case.
The government, of course, does provide money to the students when they go to university and then expects them to pay back if they're in well-paid jobs. And the economic evidence is still pretty clear that, on average, being a graduate is going to earn you more than being a non-graduate. And setting aside the economic gains, just the broadening of your horizons, the kind of experience you have for those 3 years, sets you up for life. So I'm a believer in more people going to university. I think it's worked well for Britain and it's worked well for individuals. Of course, there have to be a range of other options as well. But those young people are getting good A-level grades today and are going forward to university. They've got a very good chance of 3 years that will transform their lives for the better.
Yes, and I don't want to rain on the parade, good luck to them, but you say it's good for those who pass, but a recent report showed that there's a third of graduates who are in jobs where they didn't even need the degree in the first place. How can you justify that?
Well, during their 20s, especially since the crash, there has been a slower process of younger people getting promotion and moving on and up in the jobs ladder. However, in a tougher jobs market, it actually makes going to university and being a graduate even more important. And a lot of those jobs that are called non-graduate jobs, when you look into it closely, there's quite a debate. Maybe the jobs themselves have become more technically demanding, maybe the regulations are more onerous, maybe the level of equipment and kit you have to deal with is more sophisticated. There does seem to be a process, not just in Britain, but around Western countries, where jobs do become graduate jobs, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. That may tell us something about how economies advance.
So just a few facts and figures to warm us up. Education is obviously a very powerful tool. And it does help those who are marginalised, disadvantaged, can lift themselves out of poverty and fully participate in citizens. We get that. We want to create 600 million jobs. In the next decade, 600 million jobs. 30 million children are growing up poor in the world's richest countries. Something wrong here. 65% of children entering primary school will ultimately end up working in a completely new job that doesn't exist today. What price university? A third of all desired skill sets of most occupations will be comprised of capable that are not considered crucial to the job today. The average person will have more conversations with their bots than with their spouse. Maybe no bad thing. 50% of occupations will no longer exist by 2025. The US has the highest average annual tuition fees of any country worldwide at $8,200 a year, apart from the UK. The equivalent fees in Spain, Italy and Portugal are all below $2,000 a year. Students in some Scandinavian countries are paid to go to university. Many Danish students living away from home are entitled to up to $1,000 a month to help with their living costs. Very different approach. Which way is better? Which way is right? We try to fit the UK at the top. Is there a better way? Does university really work? Does it need to change? A-levels were invented in 1951. They're still doing precisely the same thing. Are we asking youngsters to make career decisions too early? Is the sort of teaching that hasn't changed since 1951 appropriate for a world that is changing so quickly? So have I got a panel for you? Was it about 18 months ago? About 18 months ago, I was giving a talk at university, and a student came up and approached me and he said, I'm looking for a mentor. We swapped business cards. It took 3 months for us to meet. When we met, I said to him, what is it you want from a mentor? He said, well, I'm very clear on the career I want. I want to be an investment banker. I said, why do you want to be an investment banker? He said, I just want to be an investment banker. The amount of effort I'm going to have to put in to get through university, it's the career that's going to give me the most returns. Interesting. Mentored him for a bit, and then when it came to the summer holidays, he came to work with us. And we saw someone who was smart, who was bright, who was able, not afraid of heavy lifting, had the right work ethic, asked the right questions, and we started to stretch him. Taking him, he'd follow me around, go to a place I'd be going to, and his head was up, his ears were open, he was seriously alert. By the end of the summer holidays, the investment banking thing had sort of subsided. Now he wanted to make a difference. And that difference didn't really have as tight a goal as investment banking. He came back to see me and he said he'd like to do a placement year. Come and work with us on a placement year. And as part of the placement, got himself an internship at Barclays. But not any part of Barclays. He went to the Swish part of Barclays, down in Shoreditch, and working in their fintech space. I think some of the experiences he had in real life, at real life work, made him someone who they instantly offered him an unconditional job when he finished his career. But he came back to us to finish his year's placement. He's now asking himself some questions. I've got the banker of a position with Barclays, but I'm seeing so much more of the world. Is this where I want to be? And we're focused less on his skills, but more on his awareness, on how our world is changing, how we can make a difference, introduce him to the world of purpose, introduce him into the world of leadership. And I think he's going to have a bit of a challenge going back to university, because I'm not sure it's going to move at the pace, it's going to stretch him, it's going to challenge him in the way that he's challenged with us. Where's Adam?
Yeah, that's true.
Is that fairly true?
Yeah. I'm not looking forward to going back. I don't see the point. I'm ready to work now.
Have a chat with Adam later. So with that, I'd like to introduce my panel. I've got a very, very special panel. I've got a couple of people who work they're educators, very passionate about what they do. And I've got a couple who missed out on, one went to university and one missed out on university. But they're both doing exceedingly well today. So let's start with Kerry. Where's Kerry? Give Kerry a round of applause. She's our head teacher. Kerry Scott. Kerry, grab a seat. A very passionate head teacher who cares about what education can bring. It's Chris Brady. Chris, come and join us. Everyone knows Professor Chris Brady. Thank you. Alfie. Alfie has started his own fintech. Alfie Ruffle, give Alfie a big round of applause, please. And Rooney Brooks, who went to university, but is now working in fintech as well. Give her another round of applause, please. So, Kerry, I'm going to come to you first. How long have you been a head teacher?
6 years.
Which university did you go to?
I went to London Metropolitan University.
And what did the university do for you? How did you get there first, and what did it do for you?
Wow, you've started on a bit of a sore note, because I was, I'll confess to everybody now, I was kicked out of school. A little bit
Perfect
troublesome.
grounding for the head teacher.
I was kicked out of school, so I had no qualifications, but decided that teaching might be the right thing for me, having a young son, and thinking that we could do something quite interesting. So I had to go off to college and get an access course, which then gave me the place to university. So it was a means to an end. You can't be a teacher without a degree. And so I got focused on that. My degree was in education. I was ready for that, and I specialised in maths and shot through. And somebody who kicked out of school, no qualifications. I got a first. I did all right. I did all right, but yeah, it was literally a means to an end. That's why I had to do it.
Rooney,
Hello.
you took a slightly different route.
Yes.
So where did you start off?
So I similarly have to kind of confess, I went off to uni and didn't like it, so I dropped out. And
What didn't you like about it?
I didn't like the fact that, firstly, I felt very pressured into going to begin with. My school offered very limited options other than university, and given that it was a very good academic school, it then looked so much towards, how many people can we send off to Oxbridge? And if you didn't fall into that category, you were kind of like left to the side. Having said that, I still felt like I had to go to university, so I looked at some of the things that might interest me more than anything, because I knew there wasn't something I wanted to do at the end of it. I didn't want to be a doctor, I didn't want to be a lawyer, so I knew that there were certain things, unlike you, where you needed to get your degree to be able to do your job. I just thought, look, I'll do something that interests me. But even that wasn't challenging enough. There wasn't enough contact time, so I would go and I'd have like 6 hours a week, and it wasn't enough for me to keep me there. So I came out and had a look at it again, and my mum was very much like, and she'll probably be watching this, so sorry, but she was very much like, look, and both my parents wanted me to get a degree. So I then looked at it again and decided to go again. This time I decided to do something where I thought, well, actually I could do that at the end and it'll be worthwhile. So I went in and did a physio course. Unfortunately, had a hip operation halfway through my course, so I couldn't even continue it then, and kind of came out and was not forced to go into work because that's what I wanted at that time, but I had to look at different options. I knew I couldn't go third time. I was like, at this point, it was becoming a bit of a laughing joke around the dinner table. So I then went into work. But if I look back at the whole entire thing, maybe if I hadn't have had my operation, I would have continued. But I always felt like the working life, and it confirmed when I went there that I needed something that every day was going to challenge me and I'd be able to get up in the morning. There's an element of it that was routine, and then the other side to it was just something that was going to constantly challenge me.
Very good. Alfie, a different approach yet again.
Yeah, so a bit like yourself, Kerry. I didn't quite get chucked out though. I saved myself there. Had some good teachers on my side. But no, yeah, left school, no GCSEs, and went to work with my dad, who's sat in the crowd now, to sell commercial vehicles. Didn't really quite plan out how I thought. 3 weeks and we had enough of each other. So by then I just thought, save our relationship. I took myself back into education and I done a maths GCSE and I done an entrepreneurial course. While I was doing that...
An entrepreneurial course, say more
Yes.
about that.
So basically how to build a business from start to finish, really. There wasn't a lot of content in there. It was just a year course. I'd done it with my best mate as well at the time, so it was a bit of a laugh, the course was. Got through it, it was good. While I was doing that, estate agent, and then got headhunted to work for a car finance company. I moved to Manchester when I was 17. Lived there for about 8 months, working with one of the top subprime car dealerships, which went really well, loved it. And then moved back to Portsmouth and I became South Coast Regional Manager. Had my own office, I thought it was brilliant. 18 at the time, yeah, thought I was on top of the world, and I see there was a gap in the market. There was a load of subprime leads going to waste in the southwest area. So I jumped on the phone, rang as many car dealerships as I possibly could. After hundreds of phone calls, I finally found one who'd shared their site with me, sort of give them an X, Y amount of commission on each car. going really well until made a few mistakes, a bit naive, I think, entering the business world. And yeah, ruined the business and ruined my finances completely. Put myself in 13 grand worth of debt, 18. So moved back to Portsmouth, worked in finance, so I thought I'd become a mortgage advisor. I've been selling houses, so give that a shot. Become qualified and wasn't earning the money I sort of wanted to earn. So I left that job, so I found a few jobs at this point, and went to work with my dad again for a second time. This time we actually went partners and was going pretty well. And I got caught speeding. And that was the spark to really developing track finance, which is to help young people manage money, grow credit. And the reason why it sparked me was because I got caught speeding and I went on a speeding awareness course. I took a theory and a practical, and by the end of it, because I took the theory and practical course, I can go on a day course and they forget about me speeding, and they cleared me of my points, cleared me of my fine. So I went out of there still 13 grand worth of debt and thought, why has nobody given me a second chance with my finances when I've never been taught about finances? I learnt from my dad and my mum, which are probably not the best two people to learn from, to say the least. So that's, it took me on my journey. So 2 years now, just been developing track finance and really starting to pick up some traction.
Fabulous. Chris?
Pompey boy. Pompey boy. Well, don't need to hear from me. He's just told you my story like 40 years later. Basically, got thrown out of school, got nicked for something. I can't remember. You know, it's just he just told my story completely.
I went first.
Yeah, you know, what he did was when he was 17, he phoned me up and said, "How can I mess my life up for the next 15 years?" I said, "This is how you do it, son." And he just followed it completely. He just followed it completely by the sound of it. And he's got the perfect name, Alfie, and you know, you all seen the film. He looks the part. I mean, you know, everything's there, and he's from Pompey. You know, what a nightmare. So it was very similar. There's a strong theme here. Got thrown out of school at 15, and you worked for about 10 years. And one of the really interesting things we had at school was that the teachers at the school at the time were passionate about certain things, and so we had one teacher who'd been a surveyor, a land surveyor. And his subject was really interesting, so I thought, I'll have a go at that. You know, I enjoyed that. You're out in the open and that sort of stuff. So I joined the Ordnance Survey and got that sort of job going. And then sort of mid-20s, but you know, also East End boy. So by the mid-20s, I already had 2 kids and married by that stage, which is de rigueur if you live in the East End. And so, so get to about 24, 25. And you were out in the cold all day, your hands were blistered and everything. And I can remember the exact moment when I sort of changed was I was walking back about 5 o'clock in the winter. It was getting dark, and there was a big, a porter cabin type thing where all the engineers worked. And I'm trudging up the hill with a tripod over this shoulder, bleeding and I looked up and they're all in shirt sleeves, walking around, all warm. So I went in and said to one of the engineers, "How'd you get to be an engineer?" I mean, this is how bad it is. And I think this is one of the things people don't understand. If you've got parents who don't know the system and you've got to find it out yourself, it's quite difficult. So, and it hasn't changed in like 50 years. It hasn't changed. So I went into this guy and said, "How do you get to be one of these engineer things that looks a better job than the one I'm doing here, working for you?" And he said, "Well, you get a degree." And literally, I'm not joking now, this was a conversation. I said, "So what's that? What's the degree? What'd you do with one of those things?" He said, "Well, if you want to be an engineer, you have to do this." Going back to your point, the difference between if you want to be one of those, you have to be so-and-so. So went to the local college and all this is true, by the way, went into this guy and said, "Excuse me, you do A-levels?" "No, you do the pre-qualifications for getting a degree, don't you?" And he said, "Yeah." I said, "What are they called?" He said, "They're called A-levels." I said, "How many of them do I need?" He said, "Well, in those days it was 2. He said, "You need a couple of those." I go, "Okay. Well, I've been doing land surveying for a while. Is there such a thing as an A-level land surveying?" He said, "Yes." Right. So I went off to that college, got an A, obviously, because I knew more than the lecturer. He had no idea what he was doing. Went to the next one. I said, the other thing I was quite interested in at school was English. I'll have one of those as well. So I've got to be in that, so I was okay. went back to him and said, right, I've got these things, I want to go to university. And in those days, you had to, I didn't understand, how can you be asked what you think you're going to get? I didn't understand that, so I lost a whole year again by going along and saying, I've got these A-level things now, I'm ready. And he said, oh no, you haven't applied yet through what used to happen before UCAS. There was a system before UCAS. He said, oh no, you have to apply at this time of the year. I said, well, you didn't tell, this is true. I said, you didn't tell me that at the time. He said, I never thought you'd bother to do it. Oh, well, thank you very much. You know, that's nice. So I lost a whole year then, and then went to university, and it was, I did, notwithstanding my accent, I did an English literature and linguistics course, because my wife at the time was very posh, and she used to keep pulling me up for my grammar. So after that, I was able to say, hey, one of us has got an English degree here. Do you mind? And so that was my motivation. Yeah. These motivations are tiny little things, aren't they? In life? And then from then on, all the way through, and it goes back to what Rennie was saying there. I played semi-professional football. I was a professional coach, but it's this coaching thing as opposed to teaching. You know, this just driving away from this didactic approach and saying, well, this can't be right. This can't be. And I had a teaching practice in a primary school, and I said, right, I'm going to teach Greek mythology. Philosophy, because they'll get it, and they go, they would live, and I go, yeah, trust me, they'll get it. It's stories, they'll get it. And sure enough, they did. And I thought, well, you know, so as I said to Renee, I said, nightmare tonight. I don't know why you invited me. This is the only time I've ever been here where I actually know about the subject I'm talking about. And I said, so you won't be able to stop me, so I'll stop now.
Very good indeed. So, university.
Sorry, Rennie, and I've been teaching all day today, by the way, in a university. So.
What were you teaching?
Well, we're going back into the industry. We're running a course for sporting directors. So it's a master's degree for sporting directors. So it's basically all top-level athletes who are looking to get on. So I mean, we've got 3 Olympic medalists in there. You know, people like Beth Tweddle and Matthew Hogarth, the cricketer. We've got 2 of the Manchester United team, one of the Manchester City team, who run all their health and strength and conditioning type stuff, but want to be like the sporting director or want to be the CEO of a club and that sort of stuff. And it's, I mean, it's nowhere near. It's just, you know, there's no pressure. It's like there's no hard work like she has to do. It's just like, but it's exactly the sort of Socratic flip class, whatever you want to call it, where you just go in with really good people. And you just give them some tasks and give them some, and they're off and running. The only thing that's quite difficult about it is, you know, they're all Olympic athletes or super athletes, and they're like, how competitive are they? We've got one guy in there, and this goes back to, we've got one guy in there. He's middle to late 50s, right? And he's an agent, football agent, and he's from Scotland. And they come down for 2 days every couple of months, and the rest is blended online and all that. So he comes to me, he's like mid-50s, he comes to me after the first assignment and he said, how come I finished bottom? I'm bottom again. And I said, well, that's because his name's Tam. I said, that's Tam, that's because you're the worst in the class. And he goes, that's why you're bottom, that's why the others are above you. And he goes, well, I don't want to be bottom. And I went, well, okay, well, you need to do these things, but I'm telling you, mate, you're probably going to end up bottom anyway, because you ain't as good as him. So he says, so she's fine, so he comes in next time, I'm bottom again. I said, right, okay, let me just take you through this. You're 56 years old, you haven't been to school since you were 15, right? And you're passing a master's degree. Do you realise how fantastic you're doing? This is unbelievable. And he goes, oh, that's really good to hear, but I don't want to be bottom. And I'm like, okay. And so you've got these very strong characters all competing with each other, but all raising up. And everybody, we've run 2 cohorts now, and so far, fingers crossed, nobody's failed, not one. Not one. And they're all, half of them have like never been to university ever. Some of them have been, but it was 20 years ago. And they've been massively... Beth Tweddle, for example, said to me after she did a presentation, she said, how did I do? I said, it was very good, well done, well done. And she literally said, genuinely, I've never been so nervous in my life. This is an
Olympic.
Olympic world champion, because she was out of her comfort zone. She was learning other stuff. She's running her own business now. You know, going back to your point, Alf, that running other businesses don't really know the entrepreneurial type thing. So just running it because she's basically famous, you know, and got a name, so the kids will come, but not quite understanding how to develop it, how to grow it, and that sort of stuff. So for me, it's great.
It begs a question for all of you, and all of you have had a taste of academia, worked with the educators, but university hasn't changed a lot over time. What should its role be? How does it serve all those students best?
Well, I think it needs to become a sort of a training ground, rather than just lecturing was what, in the 1500s, and we're still doing it today. Why? It needs to become a training ground. Instead of just knowledge transfer, it needs to be able to teach people how to apply that knowledge. So I think apprenticeships are a great thing, but I think they really need to come out with some really real learning, interactive learning experiences, rather than just knowledge transfer lectures. The amount of people I speak to just find it so boring.
There's a new wave on its way. There's something called the London Interdisciplinary School, going to be opening next year. I'm super excited about it. I think it's the answer. I think it's the answer right now that we're looking for. What they're focusing on is interdisciplinary, so crossing over the arts with the sciences, having a really diverse intake that's not academia based. So the qualities that they're looking for in the UCAS form that they'll have to apply through, but the things that they're looking for are passion, motivation, interests in particular things. And then the degrees will be based on real life problems, solving real life problems like childhood obesity or malaria genes, or tracking palm oil into consumables, creating something where shops will be able to track palm oil, something like that. And then the teaching part of that will be giving the tools to be able to solve these problems.
So very real issues, tangible issues,
Real
contemporary
things,
issues.
project-based, working with other people, with other skill sets to be able to solve problems. And then also with real internships, real paid work experiences out in really exciting companies. So those sorts of things, by the time they leave that university, I believe they'll be ready for the world. I'm not sure they are
There's
right
5
now.
companies linked to this. Met Police, I'll call them a company, but the Met Police, KPMG, Innocent, you know, the Jewish people, Virgin, and McKinsey's. All back in this, so there's a good chance it can survive.
And a lovely spread.
There's a good chance it can survive, but if you look at the most recent attempt at this, which is the New College of Humanities, they went through like 15 million in 2 or 3 years. They failed. They couldn't get any students, and they had to refinance. Now they've been bought out by an American company, so you know it's a difficult area. And the London Interdisciplinary Schools, as you said, not starting until 2020, and nobody quite knows whether the big companies are funding or they're just providing interns. So it's a difficult market. I mean, if you just talk about the business of education, it's a difficult market to crack.
Is that just one university that's coming?
Yeah, it's being set up by,
sorry,
it's being set up by Ed Fido, who set up School 21, which is a different approach to education 4 to 18. And now they're adding a university onto the end of it, and I just think it's such a perfect answer for right now, if it can work.
Well,
UCL
run a liberal arts type, a US type approach, and they've got 450 students on it, almost like that, very quickly. So there is a market out there, but it's like every other business. You know, some people are going to fail, some people are going to succeed, but this seems a really good initiative.
Really, would that have appealed to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I looked at what I was looking for before I went away to university, it was all about preparing me to go into the workforce. So I I mean, I looked at things like apprenticeships at the time. They weren't so readily available, which is funny because now I'm actually on one. But I didn't really know how to get onto one. They all seemed to be linked to businesses. So you kind of had to apply through Barclays, and there were X many people that would apply and only X many would get on. So it always seemed so competitive, almost more competitive than university. Now there are so many unis, so many courses that actually you can pretty much get into one with most grades that you've got, which is great because it means if you want to go but you're not the most academic, then you've still got the opportunity to. But from my point of view, it felt like going into work would be more competitive than actually going into uni, but none of the courses were there that I wanted to do, because none of them would be like going into work, or none of them would be like dealing with real life things that actually meant something to me.
So tell us about your apprenticeship at the moment.
Yeah, so I'm doing a level 5 apprenticeship in HR, so it will basically train me up to be an HR partner, and it's it's a year and a half, which is pretty much, so you get one a month, so it's one contact meeting a month, but you have various modules, and I've had 2 or 3 now, either seminars or times where we get together, and they do it, so they call it like reflective learning, so you basically learn about everything online and you do everything that you're doing, and then you put it to practice when you go to your seminar. Firstly, that is, for me, the better way to learn. I feel like when you go to uni, like you were saying, when you're being lectured about something, actually a lot of people, you switch off. Yeah, exactly. The amount of people who must just switch off and not take anything in, hopefully not like you lot are doing right now, but a lot of people who must just not take anything, and then afterwards you're sat with an essay in front of you thinking, well, I don't know what to do. Whereas they do it the other way around. You have to go prepared. So I have to learn everything before, and then we go and we talk about our assignment, and we talk about how we put it into practice. And it's all things that I practice on a day-to-day basis, all things that are adding value to my job. So it's just a completely different style of learning.
Do you have to pay for it?
No. So again, it's set up. We've got the levy system, so the government levy, and we've now got actually 3 people. Bearing in mind, I work for a startup, so we're having our 3rd apprentice, looking at bringing on our 3rd apprentice, and obviously all of that is funded by the government. And so it's completely. I've got a training sort of contract, so I can't just like leave at the end of it without the risk of having to take the cost of it on. But at the end of the day, it's all completely covered.
But you're getting value from it, so you don't
Yeah.
see that.
No.
So, Chris, you said something that it's really hard to get these universities up and running. Are they businesses today?
Yeah, the businesses. Yeah, I mean, I work for a university, but as a consultant. But I'm also a non-executive director on an alternative provider that's got like 5,000 students and is validated by a university. But it's a business. It's a for-profit business, and the interesting thing is, and it's common knowledge, but we very nearly went out of business. And so you've got 5,000 students sat out there, and you're thinking, hang on, and the government is saying, we won't bail anybody out. But they've already bailed loads of people out already. But then they now need to make a stance, and they're not going to bail anybody out. And we actually managed to refinance through our parent company and so on and so forth. But it's hard. It's a hard business now. I think one of the things that people don't understand is that, say for the last 30 years, most British universities have been operating insolvent, technically. So what used to happen was you'd have a cap on the student numbers you could, and if you went over the cap, you had to actually pay back the fees that the government were giving. So you'd say, we'll go over the cap by 10 students, and that's it cost the government 30,000 quid, for example, so we need to pay that back. But every university knew they never actually paid it back. The government never come knocking on the door, didn't send bailiffs around or anything. So they basically sort of said, well, it doesn't matter, we'll over-recruit by X amount, and that we're never going to have to pay that money back. But technically, that they were operating insolvent. So what then happened was the government came in, I can't remember which government, Blair government, the Conservative government, and said, stop, we're not doing this anymore, we're going to do so-and-so. So all these universities were thrown up in the air. How do we run our business now? What's the budgets look like? And this is why you're finding out a load of vice-chancellors are getting sacked and disappearing off the face of the globe now. Basically, they were ducking and diving, and they've been found out. it's like any other business, and so it's very difficult for people who are trying to enter. When I was entering, when you were entering education, to believe that this place is a business. And so in my day, you used to, if you got through the first year, you more or less you knew you were okay because they'd cut you at the end of the first year. Well, you're not going to cut somebody paying £9,000, are you? So
was this a good move then? Let's broaden this. Was this a good move that students had to pay?
I think we've got to ask ourselves, is it worth it at the end of the day? Because, for example, I took a degree as a means to an end. Rooney took a degree. It's not worth it. What's the point? And I think I've spoken before and said that what is it we're actually teaching people? Because, as you say, if we're just sitting a load of people in a room and delivering some information that we could essentially Google, we can go home and get this stuff online. You can do an online course. Why am I going to pay £9,000 a year to get this stuff when I could be out earning and learning it online anyway?
We heard from a bunch of students saying that I'm a customer, not a student. I've paid £9,000, deliver my degree for me. I've paid for it.
They're simultaneously, this is why it's such a difficult business. If I can talk about it as a business, and apologies for that, but they're simultaneously a customer and a product. Because what you want to do is, I want, if you look at these three, I want these three to go out with my badge on, saying that they went to my university and they're really employable. And so they're a product. So I've got to develop this product. And the conversation I normally have with you, when you talk about online stuff, the conversation I normally have with students is, you need to think about this in the same way as you think about your gym. So I'm going to go down the gym, I'm going to pay X amount of money, I'm going to pay this amount of money if I've got a personal tutor, I'm going to pay this amount of money if I'm in a class, and I'm going to pay this amount of money if I'm online just looking at a video or whatever. So there's different ways of delivering the product to you, but ultimately for me, I'm thinking, I need her to go out, and when she walks out the door and goes for a job as an accountant, say, and I've given her an accountancy degree, if the first person she walks through the door and gets interviewed by goes, she has no idea about, double entry booking or whatever, well, that reflects on me. So it's a very delicate relationship when they're paying, But to me, I'm saying, well, if you're paying me, that doesn't mean I have to do what you say. That means you're paying me to be the expert in how you learn. And it's very difficult because students are wrestling with that at the moment. It's very difficult for them. So it's a delicate business, to be honest.
So I want to set up, we're going to take a break, and I want to set up the questions from our audience after the break. And here's the bits that I'm hearing, is that university isn't for everyone.
None of my kids went to university.
Really?
No.
Why?
Because I'm a shit parent, basically.
I shall move swiftly on. So, what we've heard, are the universities a little dated? The rise of apprenticeships. What price universities we're paying, many of our students are paying, are they really getting value for money? What are the alternatives? We're seeing placements, we're seeing apprenticeships, we're seeing work experience, we're seeing many other ways that seem to be preparing our talented youngsters much better for the changing world of work. But the universities, as we say, there's new universities coming. Have they cracked it? You're interdisciplinary. If we could have it all to do again, would we see university as integral, or perhaps not?
I overheard Andy actually earlier on when he was chatting outside, and by the way, he's obviously learned something because he agreed with everything you said as his boss. So he's clearly learned. He's clearly learned that. But I heard him chatting outside and saying, I'm learning so much working. And one of the interesting things when I have these debates with other universities, especially the big universities, you say, well, what's the best university in the country for employability? Probably nobody will know. It's Bath University. Absolutely 100% the best for employability. Why? Because they insist most of their courses have a year out where you work for another organisation, so that's why they're really employable. So when I'm rowing with the Vice-Chancellor of Bath University, who's on £435,000 a year, by the way, I say to her, so basically what you're telling me is your students are so employable because of the year they don't spend with you.
On that note, we're going to take a bit of a break. Join us for a drink. Have a chat with our panelists. When we come back, it's your time. I'll be coming to the floor for your questions. What is it you want answering? What's your strong views? What have you heard this part that you agree with or perhaps disagree with? Please join me giving our panel a fantastic round of applause. I'll have you back in 20 minutes, please. Come and fill your boots, please.